Jim Swanson is the CIO of a company that I think many of us have known before and obviously been in the news a lot recently, Johnson & Johnson. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Josh. I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
So I know, again, obviously, top of mind, and I know obviously we're going through a bunch of approvals right now, but J&J has been in the news, about the FDA approval for the COVID-19 vaccine. We can't talk a lot about it, but what can you share with the group to this point?
Yes, thanks for the question. So as you may have seen, as you've talked about, J&J recently filed our applications for emergency use authorization and conditional approval for COVID-19 vaccine candidate with multiple health authorities around the world, and we're certainly very excited about it. But as we seek to gain that regulatory authorization, any communications we can have at this time is we're really limited. We're kind of in our quiet period, if you will. And so unfortunately, I really can't talk about it other than the fact that we certainly are proud and honored with our scientists, our patients, and our regulatory authorities work around the world to hopefully deliver a new vaccine to the world.
Great. No, exciting times. So, a lot of the work, though, that you have done and J&J has done in leveraging technology and innovation across your various disciplines have sort of led us to this period of being able to compress the timelines of bringing not just this specific vaccine, but drugs and vaccines to market, from everything from R&D to clinical trial research to manufacturing and then supply chain. So this compression of time where people think everything moved very quickly has probably been a lot of work, leading up to it to accelerate and be able to do some of this complex work. Talk a little about the innovation that's happened at J&J that enables, all of these different areas to work effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. You're right. It doesn't happen overnight. What COVID has done is it's certainly accelerated all these areas, but we had to have some frameworks and groundwork we had put in place to really be able to be successful through it. And that was everything from our investments in cloud computing, from public and private cloud, so we can actually do scalable workloads as data grew rather rapidly. What we did with our networks to ensure we can connect securely data and information. You think about science in general, it requires a village of thought leaders, internal to the company and external to the company. So academic institutions, key opinion leaders, et cetera, and bringing that knowledge together in a really effective way. There's things like digital twinning that we can apply to our supply chain. So you can simulate a supply chain process. And then in the computer in silico, what if I change these parameters? Will it increase output? Would it reduce cycle time? Would it get me more efficient? So we were doing a lot with data science and digital twinning and operational research to really enable that. We also have a big focus on how we leverage data. If you think about what we do in our clinical trials, putting together real world evidence data, so data that you're actually getting in the external world, marrying that with our clinical data. And then from there, we can actually accelerate clinical trial. We can look at enrollment, getting the best patients through those programs, accelerating the time to deliver that innovation to the marketplace. And so a number of those things have really helped us really do that, but then do it at scale. Even how we interact with our healthcare professionals digitally, it becomes really important, especially as everything got locked down, being able to connect to them, talking about emerging capabilities in our medical device division, or talking about pharmaceuticals and getting more insight around the treatment and treatment options. All of those came together that we were able to execute at scale and really learn as we were going through this pandemic around how do we apply that. And the outcome has been truly amazing, and really proud of the organization of how it's embraced it, the whole company. So right. Really great.
And I think when we spoke, I think we talked about that this was a unique sort of unifying objective, right? So sort of a year ago, the pandemic hits and really everyone is unified and sees a single objective. How do you think about prioritization when you think across all of your business units, right? So Johnson & Johnson has everything from consumer to med device to pharmaceuticals. When you think about prioritization of your innovation roadmap and your investments into technology, post-pandemic, now when you have to think about, okay, business as usual, I need to now reallocate time, resources. How do you think about prioritization and where you make sort of the investments and put the resources around innovation?
We got to do a real live user acceptance testing on our prioritization through the pandemic, because we had, before the pandemic hit, we had worked on what we call our must-win battles, those things that we really have to be good at, whether that be in our corporate systems, whether it be interactions, omni-channel with our healthcare professionals, e-commerce, supply chain connectivity. We created a idea around these must wins we had to do with roadmaps and product roadmaps and deliveries we need to install with alignment with our business. So it wasn't, this was the business strategy, and then here's the technology strategy, and hopefully they come together. It was actually integrated. To achieve this business strategy, here's the roadmap of capabilities we need to enable, and this is what was most important to enable the highest outcome. We took that same approach when COVID hit, and we said that the methodology works. Now the outcome is somewhat different, where now we're focusing on patient safety and getting some critical supplies to market, employee safety, and making sure that our on-site workers will be really effective, and ensuring that unmet medical need was going to happen, even though hospitals were shutting down, even though, or not allowing sales reps to go in, even though we had to get our message out. And so we were able to reprioritize using that methodology. And the really amazing thing was we were all aligned on the same outcome. It wasn't just I had to deliver a technology solution, the business had to deliver a key message to a healthcare professional, supply chain had to deliver a product. We all aligned on ensuring we had supply. We all aligned on ensuring employees were safe. We all aligned on making sure we can keep connectivity with our healthcare professionals and the patients that we serve. And that drove our agenda. And all we did was we took that methodology and repurposed to where the new priorities were and anchored the organization on that. And as we come out of the pandemic, and it will end eventually, we take that same methodology again, and what's the unmet need that we have to fulfill, and making sure we're laser focused on those outcomes.
So, you mentioned the workforce, a couple of times. J&J has, I think, over 100,000, employees. So again, COVID strikes, and now you obviously need to connect and allow your employees to collaborate in, to your point, a secure way. Talk a little about sort of, infrastructure wise, what you needed to change and implement, so that your employees were able to be as productive, as they once were, in teams and, and in the physical environment, and talk a little about sort of how that'll change the work going forward. Will you continue to use some of the things that you put in place during this fully remote time or mostly remote time, going forward?
Yeah, I mean, again, learning is a wonderful thing. And as the pandemic happened across the world, it started in China, then moved to Europe and US and then Latin America. And then you see kind of the reverse happening as people are coming out of it. We learned a ton around how to connect our employees. So you think about everything from virtual desktop infrastructure to, again, cloud computing to video conferencing, but that wasn't enough. That was a great start to making sure we could do those at scale. But as I mentioned, we had to connect with healthcare professionals. One great example was we were doing an average of 3,000 visits in person in Latin America with healthcare professionals that went to zero because hospitals said only critical patients can come through. So we did 3,000 visits a day. We started with 500 digital visits a week. Then we went to 1,000 a week. Then we went to 1,000 a day. And then we started to actually evolve our approach and thinking. It wasn't just what happened within the company, but how does it happen outside the company? So those were things we had to put in place to enable the connectivity that we needed. You mentioned security. We had to make sure we did that securely across all aspects of what we were doing. It was very important that that was the case because we're dealing with healthcare and healthcare information. So that's super important. But also, I think the learning of the organization, the company at large, what would have taken us probably months or years to test, a pilot, we had to do in weeks. And what the organization started to learn is this ability to be agile, to be adaptive, to be minimal viable product, and then adapt as you go, because we were getting information daily, new insights. We had to move our whole global services, which is kind of the call center for employees, offsite. And we had to do that in days. So we had to make sure they were connected to our systems, that was secure, and they could get the call centers and calls, and we were able to redirect that. Even what happened with our partners, India shut down, and a lot of our support comes out of with our partners in India and other parts of the world. We had to keep them connected. So there was a ton of things we had to do to make sure the business operates. We maintained delivery of critical life-saving products. We kept our employees safe, and we kept connections with our customers and patients. And that was the learning the learning opportunity and the things we were able to amplify as we've gone through this pandemic, but do it at scale and speed.
Right. So a couple things in there, I want to ask you about. So one is this agility and ability to just to move and work faster. Um, it sounds like I'm assuming that's probably something that part of a technology organization is always preaching to the broader business, and until they need to move at that pace, they don't. So do you move forward that people will just have to increase the speed at which they move and iterate, or is it a pendulum that swings back to how things were prior to COVID?
Well, it's been really exciting to work with our business colleagues at J&J because they've actually adopted agile methodologies. If I think about a consumer health business, they're actually using agile teams. They think about product development. If we think about our digital surgery offering in our medical device division, we're actually applying agile thinking as we connect hospitals. We connect it with data. We connect it with digital surgery and robotics. So we have a platform for lung cancer. We have a platform for hips and knees, and we have a platform for general surgery. Using agile thinking to continually iterate, how do we make sure it's the best experience with the best outcomes? We're applying that. If we think about our pharmaceutical space, applying data science at scale and agile ways to support our enrollment or HCP connections, or supply chains, another great example where agile thinking is going into applying how to reimagine supply chain, not just drive efficiencies, but actually reimagine how we deliver a product to a surgeon or patient that needs it. And then we've done a ton with intelligent automation. And even there, it's not just about driving efficiencies, but how do you reimagine processes? And using technology with great business thinking and leadership coupled to an outcome we all are aligned to, we've been able to show and translate and accelerate all these opportunities. And I think, as much as money's being spent in technology and healthcare, I think we're really just starting. And there's so much new opportunities I think we can bring as we bring the whole organization, 135,000 employees, being kind of what we call digital natives and embracing it and taking their domain knowledge with the technology and the acceleration with a common outcome. And we can really transform the trajectory of human health.
And I like when you speak about sort of all of the stakeholders or constituents, right? So it's your employees, it's your customers, it's the end consumer, it's the physician, it's making sure they're all part of sort of that outcome. You mentioned sort of the physician visits. Any learnings from there? I mean, where people were resistant previously to doing something virtually because you could do it face to face. And how was sort of again, do you start to see that moving forward, that those virtual visits will continue to happen, maybe not at the same scale as they're happening now, but that physicians are more open to having it virtually versus having a rep or someone visit them directly in the office?
Yeah, man, we got a ton of learning there. We were able to do a number of webinars and seminars that we normally do to, let's say, surgeons around our products and how they work in a particular situation. And normally that was a surgeon would come to a session, a couple of days, and they would learn about it. And you get so many surgeons that would have time that they would be able to come. We were able to 10x that through virtual. They didn't need to leave their office. They didn't need to travel anywhere. We could have the virtual session. They actually were more connected because they could talk to colleagues all around the world, whoever attended that session. And so that was something they really loved and something that actually brought more information they needed to make sure that they get the right outcomes for their patients. In other cases, they said, we still love the in-person interaction, but now we want it to be more meaningful. Because now we have these other vehicles that we can get information. When we connect, tell us about what's coming. Tell us about some of the things that we may need to spend more deeper time on, because I have some of the basics now, but I want to spend that interaction face-to-face time on more meaningful discussions and dialogues. And so it's just one of the examples of evolving your thinking based on how technology is being applied. And there again, we had our own aha moment that said, well, physicians would never want to do this technically or digitally. They want to see face to face. And what we learned on both sides, where there's definitely ways we can do it that was effective for them, effective for us, and we actually reach greater scale as a result. And so, a lot of things that we've learned as we've kind of gone through this journey.
Right. So you mentioned sort of aha moments. Anything else that you would have expected going into this that proved you wrong, right? A hypothesis that maybe you said, hey, I expect things to work a certain way, or the data to show us one thing, and you were like, wow, again, not what we would have expected from, from a specific, group within or external to the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we certainly learned is you can definitely get fatigue. You're never off, and we saw that within our employees. How do we create the right amount of time where you're at work and you're engaged, and then you need time away as well? And we all have Zoom fatigue, and whatever collaboration tool you're using. So I think we learned around how do we get that right balance, even looking at our own employees. And I think we're still learning, to be quite honest, but we're going to come out of this with a better insight of what that right mix and balance is. I think as we look at data and we look at connecting of that data, making sure we do that securely. We always talk about data being the fuel or the oil for the engine. We never have enough data, but how do we now really take advantage of that data and go from the siloed view of that information to really making it what we call securely democratized across the enterprise? And that includes with our partners and our researchers, our healthcare professionals, our patients, because we can actually accelerate innovations at a greater scale. So that's been really great to see. And then because we've had so much demand on technology, the whole organization's eyes have opened, whether it be intelligent automation, whether it be data science, whether it be data itself, whether it be e-commerce. And we were able to grow our e-commerce footprint dramatic fashion, which had a lot of value, because if you think about consumers, they needed their various consumer goods, and e-commerce became a way to accelerate getting those products to them. So there's been a ton of learning. And if anything, I'm challenged is our CEO said to me, wow, it's amazing what we've been able to do with technology. The bar's been raised. How do we now take it to that next level? Because now the appetite is, we understand the value, but we're just starting tip of the iceberg. We expect so much more now. And so it's a rallying cry for me. It's a rallying cry for my organization, which I'm super proud of. And it allows us to elevate our game. And technology not being more important than the science, not more important than the patients that we serve. They're always at the center of what we do. But technology plays a critical role to deliver on our mission and purpose for the company.
And have you, as someone who's played a role sort of in, in other companies, was it once that technology, if it's the CTO or CIO, was a supporting function to the business, but didn't have necessarily a seat at the table? And now, how much more do you feel like technology and the senior strategists and technologists within organizations are sitting there as businesses are being developed and as strategies are being developed? Do you feel that the voice is much greater than just being told, hey, this is our business objective, go figure out, the technologies we need to put in place? I mean, is that happening across most enterprises now?
I think, I talked to a lot of CIOs and Fortune 50 companies, the Fortune 500. We always kind of compare notes. How are we doing? And as you said, I've been in multiple companies in multiple industries. I think everybody's on this journey one way or the other. There are different levels of maturity along the journey for sure. There's different levels of understanding of what technology can bring. And a lot of, I think, the role of technology groups is to help educate. You got amazing business leaders. We have amazing scientists. We have amazing commercial people. We have amazing engineers in supply chain and HR professionals and finance and procurement professionals and law. They didn't grow up in the tech space. We need to educate around what are those opportunities. And I think everybody has gotten a little bit of sense of what's possible through this pandemic. But if you understand where those companies are at, what's your role as a technology organization to unlock the value? And we actually, when I came into J&J, I've been back to J&J now for about a year and a half. I was here about a decade ago. The first thing we did is say, what's our purpose? We created a purpose statement of what we wanted the technology function to be. And it goes as follows. We shape the future of healthcare by unlocking the power of people, technology, and insights. Shape is an important word. We have to shape healthcare, anchored in J&J's mission of transforming the trajectory of human health. We have to unlock the power of people, the whole company, 130,000 employees, through technology and insights. So we have a real opportunity to help in a mission that we all deeply care about, that is important to every one of us, because we all need healthcare and we all need innovation. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity for technology to play a really significant part in that future. And I would say the true of any company that you're in. You've got to own that and you've got to drive that. If not, the business does not wait. They will go. You've got to be there. And even when I look at my own organization and being future ready, there's a lot of work we do to make sure the talent is there. We're using AI to avoid bias in our selection process. Diversity and inclusion is absolutely critical to our success as a company, and we invest heavily in that. And so these are all aspects I think technology really needs to step up and lean in. Otherwise, they will do it anyway, and you will be left on the sideline, and you miss the opportunity.
Right. And I think that's a great lead. And we have a question, from the audience, from Brian Henry, related to skills and talent. So you've mentioned a lot of things from, AI, cloud, you mentioned data science, which the next session will be talking about data science. How do you, think about recruiting the right talent, upskilling the existing talent? Because you're competing for talent with just about every company out there, the pure play tech companies, as well as every large enterprise that's going through this similar journey. How do you think about recruiting and then, like I said, taking your existing talent and upskilling? What's the strategy so that they are an amazing tech team that could sort of embrace all of these new trends?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It really anchors in I start with our purpose. What's our strategy underneath it? There's three pillars: modernizing our tech ecosystem, talent, which is not just talent in my organization, about 5,000 people. It's actually talent for 130,000 people and growing and developing that. And then third bucket is accelerating business outcomes. So we clearly position talent as a core element of our strategy so people know we're serious about it. And then as we unpack talent, what we've been doing is we've been looking at what does future ready mean? What are the skill sets and the competencies that we need to really be the thought leaders, back to my purpose, shape and unlock and build that skill set? We also have to be really honest and open. Where are we against that skill set? And we've been doing some pretty neat things with AI and inference engines that allows us to take external de-identified data, marry that with our internal data, and look at what are the skill gaps and skill strengths we have in the organization. So I have a heat map now against some of our 40 capabilities that we've highlighted around where we're strong and where we can develop. And now we're taking the plan of, now we know that, how do we now build that with learning curriculum? And how do we tie that to marketplace, which basically is, here are the jobs to be done with skills that we want. Here are the skills that we need. Here are the experiences we want our employees to have to develop. And how do we align those together? Because we all know taking a course on its own is not going to move anything. You got to tie it to experiences. Now, go back to your point about attracting and retaining talent. We believe on a couple things. We think our mission is really important around healthcare. That in itself has got an amazing draw for a lot of people that want to have an impact in healthcare. Second, we're highlighting, even in calls like this, the importance of technology to that mission. So if technology is critically important, you can attract and retain the best talent because they're interested in the mission and they want to go to a place where technology really is valued and it matters. And then third, we create a process by which we continually learn. We continually develop ourselves. We're never satisfied. We're always in beta, as we say internal now, that we're always a learning organization, because the comment I make to my organization is the half-life of a technology is about 18 months. Technology is changing that rapidly. If we aren't continually challenging ourselves, we can't have the value I want to have for our company. And that's not okay. We have to have that value because patients are waiting. We need to support them. So that combination, and if I add inclusion and diversity, not as a side effort, it's core to what we think about and what we do. And we make that a material effort that we're inclusive, we're diverse, diversity of thought, diversity of gender, diversity of sexual orientation, diversity of geography. All of those matter, and skill set as well, because only then can you get the best outcome. So those are the things we think are really important to us. And for those that are important to them, they'll come to us. If it's not important to them, they won't be here anyway. But we do think that's an important draw. So we need both external and internal. We have to have the mechanism. We've got to measure ourselves. We've got to be transparent where we're at. And we got to continually learn. That's the only way.
It sounds like, I think certain people think about, I'll call out healthcare and financial services as these old entrenched industries that aren't, don't move. So as I'm thinking about it, if I'm a technologist, I'm not going to move the needle. It sounds like here, right, you're trying to create a different culture about how we think about big, sort of pharma or big healthcare, that you're able to move agile. Is it hard? Is it, or do you see when you're out there telling that story to recent graduates who are, looking at what industry to go into or to go to a startup, that you have to sort of reset how they think about a big, large company, and especially in healthcare?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. I learned a lot by going to other industries. When I left healthcare and I went to agriculture, I worked for 2 agriculture companies, and I got to tell you, it's the oldest industry on the planet. I was expecting it to not to be very technical savvy, but it actually is tremendously technically savvy. It's got an important mission of feeding the planet sustainably. And I learned a lot around how technology can be applied in the oldest industry on the planet. And I swore to myself, if I ever got back to healthcare, I was going to take that learning and apply it to healthcare. The great thing about big companies like J&J is, think about, if you're a data scientist, we have a lot of data. And without data, you can't do data science. We have a lot of opportunity in J&J, and you think about our sectors in consumer health, which is really science-driven consumer products. If you think about pharmaceuticals in a whole bunch of really important therapeutic areas, from oncology to cardiovascular to inflammation. If you think about medical devices, I mentioned digital surgery as a great example. There's amazing tech in everything that we do, and you can't do it with that technology. Yes, big companies can sometimes be slow. We can sometimes be bureaucratic. That's true. And I've been in big companies my whole life. But at the same token, they're wonderful places to have impact, to learn, to really do something meaningful. And startup companies are great. There's nothing wrong with that. I work with a lot of startup companies, there's a lot of energy, but you want to do something at scale. You want to do something that you can get you the global reach. Wow. You think about the number one healthcare company on the planet, J&J. I can't think of a bigger one or better one to do it in. So granted, I'm not the most unbiased person with that statement, but I've worked with great companies, with great people. I've taken those experiences throughout my whole career. I've valued every single one of them. But you can do great tech if you're energized about it, in a mission you care about, that you're driving it and you're relentless about it. The only person that's stopping you is you. So
right. No, that's great. And I think, to your point, mission and purpose. I mean, there's no better mission and purpose of keeping our population healthier, especially during, trying times like this one. So Jim, I think on behalf of everyone here, we really appreciate all the amazing work that J&J is doing. We appreciate you being here with us and sharing your information, and we'll look forward to hearing more from you again soon.
Thanks, Josh. I really appreciate the time, and good luck in the rest of your sessions. Take care.